Things Gary does.
So Amy Armadillo was walking home late at night, clutching this piece of paper that was going to change her life. And she's walking down her dirt road, down to her house, scratching at her shell every once in a while, face real sad. She's walking, and she's thinking about what's going to become of her life at this point, what she's going to do. And it's as she's thinking about this that she hears a noise off to her left. And in the dusky light, she's unclear about what it is, and she's looking off into this bush. She's looking carefully, still kind of walking. Maybe she can just get by, when all of a sudden a head pops up and two great glowing eyes. She starts and she stops. She stares at the eyes for a second, and they stare right back at her, and Amy Armadillo is very frightened. They're staring back at each other. And suddenly the eyes jump up and they start chasing, and Amy takes off as fast as she can carry herself, and she's running down this dirt road trying to get to her house. As she's going, she hears two large feet slamming on the ground. She's running and running and running, and she hears more feet start to come up behind her as well. They're coming out from the bushes all around her. They're boom, 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 boom. And Amy Armadillo is just running as fast as she can, still clutching that one piece of paper, and she runs. She finally gets to her house, fumbles with her keys, and gets it into her little door, and she opens the door to her little house in the middle of a hill. She gets into her house, and she shuts the door behind her, she locks it. And just as she locks the door, she hears thump, and they just start hitting the door. They're just pounding on the door as hard as they can. And she's backing up away from the door as the sounds get louder and louder and louder. She can't imagine what could be making all of this noise. There are hardly any creatures this size around here that would be doing something like this. And Amy Armadillo's fumbling, and she drops her keys down, and she's paralyzed. She has no idea what to do. And so Amy Armadillo waits for a second, calms down as the pounding still continues. She peeks outside her window. She pulls the blinds over ever so slightly. She sees a lot of dark shapes huddling around her door, taking turns slamming on the door, which is holding. And she's looking really carefully until one shape turns its head, and what she sees frightens her to no end. It's Mr. Rabbit from down the lane. But Mr. Rabbit has these great glowing eyes, and he's got blood trickling down his face and up in his whiskers and matting all of his fur, and he sees her, and he stares back at her, and he lets out this loud scream that she's never heard any creature she's ever seen make such a noise. She backs away from the window, and she has no idea what to do. Her front door is the only way in and out of her hill, and so she's panicking as the doors start slamming harder and harder as they try to get in, and she can see the hinges on the door starting to buckle. Now, Amy Armadillo is a peaceful creature. She doesn't have any sort of weapon. She doesn't even have a fire poker for a fireplace. And she panics and she panics. She has no idea what to do. And so finally a thought crosses her mind. Her friend Audie the opossum, who once had an interaction like this with a large rampant bear, once escaped that bear's clutches by playing dead, by just dropping on the floor and playing dead. And Amy Armadillo thinks about this option, and it's really all she's got. And so she starts to lay on the ground and play dead. She has no idea what she's doing as she's laying down on the floor, sprawling her arms, and she thinks how terribly ironic it is that she's in this position today, of all days, coming home from this kind of news. She lays down on the ground as the door slams harder and harder and harder, and the hinges are starting to break. She has little tears in her eyes, but she knows that dead people don't cry, and so she has to wipe her eyes to get them off. And she lays there and lets out a deep sigh as the door finally slams through and the door crashes to the ground. She lays perfectly still. Mr. Rabbit and some other creatures from around the neighborhood barrel into the room, and they're searching around, and they see her on the ground. And the rabbit steps over and looks down at her, thinking, and she takes it as a good sign that they haven't already started biting into her. And Mr. Rabbit stares and looks, and they all wait, and it's peaceful for a short moment, when all of a sudden they just tear into poor Amy Armadillo, and they are eating her and pulling her apart. The scene is terrible. And she dies. Amy Armadillo is no more. and they feast on her body. When all of a sudden, Mr. Rabbit pops up. His eyes are no longer glowing. And he looks around, wiping his face, and there's all his blood, and he looks down and he sees Amy Armadillo and his other people from around the neighborhood who are seeming to be snapping out of it like some sort of sleep. And they're looking out, and as they start to realize what they had done, and they start to remember when they themselves were bitten by some creature of the neighborhood or some friend that they once had. And they start to become baffled as to why suddenly am I back? Why am I suddenly not this flesh-eating monster? And they look around, and they find the little piece of paper that one little hand of Amy Armadillo was still clutching. And they pick up the piece of paper, and they unfold it, and it says, Amy Armadillo, you have tested positive for leprosy. Things done. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you haven't seen by the title and everything, this video is the first part of the 30 days project that I am participating in for the month of June. If you're not familiar with it, it's this small little community that tries to make a piece of artwork every day for 30 days, just as a sort of get out of the tedium, get out of option paralysis and everything, and make something cool. And I did video blogs for this last time, just showing things of the day, and felt like that was fun. It was like fun. I had a lot of fun, but I felt like it may have been a little bit boring on some of them. And so I decided for this time I'm going to try and do a short improv story each day for 30 days and film it for you, somewhat in the style of what I just did. And I hope it's fun. I hope it's enjoyable. It's going to be a really big challenge for me to especially tell them in such short spans as I want to. I beg you to subscribe so you can see all of the videos I'm going to make. Go to 30daysproject.com and see what everybody else is making. And yeah, it's going to be fun. And if you don't want to see this, there's going to be a big title on it and everything, and you can skip over these videos. I won't be making typical vlogs for this month just because this is probably going to take up most of that free time. But yeah, so hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you tomorrow. How are we doing on the headspace?